Anna sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the stack of unpaid bills scattered across the nightstand. Her fingers trembled slightly as she ran them over the rough paper edges. Rent overdue notice, credit card debt, hospital invoice for her mother's treatment. Her chest tightened with every glance. At 23 years old, she had dreamed of a life filled with adventure and purpose. Yet here she was in a tiny, cramped apartment, drowning in obligations. Her student loans had ballooned beyond what she could manage, and her part-time waitress job barely covered groceries. She sighed and pulled her laptop onto her lap, idly scrolling through social media, trying to distract herself. That was when she saw it. A sleek, sponsored ad glowing on her screen. Volunteers needed for exclusive psychological research. 3-month commitment, all expenses paid, plus generous compensation. Location undisclosed until acceptance. Her eyes narrowed. It sounded too good to be true, but curiosity tugged at her. She clicked the link. The website was simple, polished, professional, a renowned private research institute conducting experiments on human emotion. Subjects would live at a state-of-the-art facility, participate in monitored activities, and answer a series of emotional response tests. Anna read the details twice, heart racing. The pay was staggering, enough to cover her debts, wipe her credit cards clean, and even help her mother. All she had to do was sign up, agree to the terms, and give them 3 months of her life. She hesitated. She had never done anything this impulsive before. But what did she have to lose? She was stuck. Anyway. Quietly, she filled out the form. Name, age, background, emotional history. She paused at one section. Have you ever been in a serious romantic relationship? Anna flushed and reluctantly checked the no box. Her love life was non-existent. She had never dated, never even kissed anyone. She had always been too busy, too shy, too unsure. When she clicked submit, her phone buzzed almost instantly. A message confirmed her acceptance. A black car would arrive at her apartment the next morning to bring her to the research facility. Anna sat frozen for a moment, breath caught in her throat. She wanted to back out to close her laptop and forget she ever saw the ad. But instead, she rose, quietly started packing a small bag, and stood by the window staring out at the city lights. Somewhere deep down she felt it. This was the beginning of something. She did not know if it would save her or break her, but it was the first step forward she had dared to take in a long time. As the night stretched on, she lay awake imagining what waited ahead. The research, the strangers, the questions they would ask. She had no idea that behind all of it, watching from the shadows, was a man she had never met. Lucas the billionaire, who had built the entire program for reasons no one else could guess. When Anna woke the next morning, the black car was already waiting downstairs. She dressed quickly, tugging on her best jeans and a clean blouse, tying her long dark hair into a neat braid. Her heart raced as she stepped into the car, sinking into the plush leather seats. The driver gave her a polite nod, but said nothing as they pulled away from the curb. Anna watched the city pass by, her anxiety curling tight in her chest. The drive took over an hour, leading them far from the crowded streets, into a quiet green countryside. She caught sight of an enormous estate nestled among the trees, its gates tall and wrought iron, its walls lined with stone. When the car rolled through the gate, Anna's breath caught. She had never seen anything like it. The mansion ahead gleamed under the morning sun, its windows glittering, its architecture a mix of classic elegance and modern luxury. Inside, Anna was greeted by a smiling woman dressed in a sleek uniform. "Welcome, Miss Anna. We are so pleased to have you here. Please follow me." Anna followed silently, her eyes wide, as they walked through polished hallways lined with artwork and crystal chandeliers. They led her to a private room, larger than her entire apartment, with a king-size bed, a sitting area, a marble bathroom. Her bag had already been placed neatly by the dresser. After a brief orientation, Anna was introduced to the rest of the research team. There were doctors in white coats who explained that she would undergo daily tests answering questions about emotional triggers, completing memory exercises, participating in simulated social situations. Anna nodded, nervously, feeling overwhelmed but intrigued. She had assumed she would be one of many, but quickly learned she was the only active participant at the moment. When she asked why, the staff smiled politely and told her she had been specially selected. The first few days passed in a blur. Anna adapted to the routine, spending hours in interviews, watching videos designed to provoke feelings ranging from joy to sadness to anger. She wore biometric monitors that tracked her heart rate and body responses. She dined alone, or sometimes with one or two researchers who always remained professionally distant. Despite the lavish surroundings, she felt oddly lonely, like a guest in a beautiful gilded cage. And then came the first glimpse of him, Lucas. Anna first saw him one evening standing on a balcony overlooking the garden. Tall, sharply dressed with an air of authority, he spoke briefly to one of the researchers, his face partially in shadow. Anna felt a strange pull in her chest watching him from afar. She asked one of the assistants later who that man was, and they smiled faintly. "That is Mr. Lucas, the founder. He oversees everything here." From that moment, Anna began noticing Lucas everywhere. She would catch his figure disappearing down a hallway or his voice echoing softly through an open door. Occasionally, she felt his gaze flicker toward her during a session, though he never addressed her directly. Despite herself, she grew curious. Why was a billionaire personally involved in a scientific study like this? What did he want? One afternoon, as Anna was leaving the testing room, she nearly collided with Lucas in the hallway. He caught her arm, gently steadying her. For a moment, they stood frozen, eyes locked. Anna's heart thudded wildly. "I am sorry," she whispered. Lucas smiled slightly, his expression unreadable. "No need to apologize, Anna. I was hoping to speak with you soon." And just like that, he turned and walked away, leaving her breathless and confused. That night, Anna lay awake in her enormous bed, staring at the ceiling. There was something magnetic about Lucas, something she could not explain. He was elegant, yet distant, charming, yet guarded. She wondered why he had created this place, why he had chosen her, why he had started watching her so closely. She did not know that behind every test, every observation, Lucas was searching for more than data. He was searching for something no amount of money or power had ever given him. The days at the estate stretched into weeks, and Anna's routine grew familiar, yet under the surface something was shifting. She found herself looking forward to moments when Lucas appeared, even if it was just a glance across the room or a quiet nod as they passed each other in the hallway. The staff always remained formal, but Anna noticed that when Lucas was near, they watched him carefully, as if he held an invisible power over the entire operation. She wondered why someone like him, a man with unimaginable wealth and status, would dedicate so much time to a project like this. Lucas began inviting Anna to private meetings framed as special interviews for the experiment. At first, she was nervous, unsure what to expect, but each conversation left her more intrigued. He asked questions. No one else did questions about her childhood, her fears, her regrets, her dreams. Anna found herself opening up in ways she had never done before. Lucas listened intently, his gray eyes softening at times, his voice low and thoughtful. One evening, after a particularly long interview, Lucas offered to walk her back to her room. As they moved through the quiet halls, Anna felt the warmth of his presence beside her, the slight brush of his sleeve against hers. When they reached her door, she hesitated, hand on the handle. "Thank you for talking with me today," she murmured. Lucas gave her a faint smile, his gaze lingering on her face. "Thank you, Anna. You have given me more insight than you realize." As the door clicked shut behind her, Anna pressed her back to the wood, her heart racing. She told herself she was foolish to feel this way, that Lucas was just doing his job, that this was part of the research. Yet every glance, every word, felt charged with something deeper. She lay awake that night, wondering if he felt it too, or if she was only imagining the tension between them. Meanwhile, Lucas sat alone in his private office, staring out at the moonlit grounds, a glass of whiskey untouched on the table beside him. He had not expected Anna to affect him like this. When he designed the experiment, he had promised himself it would remain clinical, detached away to study human emotion from a safe distance. But Anna was not like the others. There was a quiet honesty in her, a vulnerability that stirred something long buried in his chest. He wondered how long he could keep pretending that this was all for science, when in truth it had become something far more personal. The next day brought a shift. Anna arrived at the testing room to find Lucas waiting there alone. No researchers, no assistants, just him. He invited her to sit across from him, his expression serious. Anna's heart pounded as she settled into the chair. Lucas leaned forward, his hands clasped together. "Anna, there is something I need to tell you," he began. "This program has always been about more than data. It is about connection, about trust, about understanding what drives human love and loyalty." Anna frowned, confused. "I thought it was about emotion patterns and psychological mapping." Lucas shook his head slowly. "That is what we tell the world, but for me this has always been personal." He rose from his seat, moving to the window, his silhouette framed against the light. "I have spent years surrounded by people who want something from me, my money, my name, my power. I built this project to find someone who could see past all that, someone who could see me." Anna's breath caught in her throat. "Why me?" she whispered. Lucas turned his gaze, meeting hers. "Because you are real, Anna. You are honest and brave, and you do not even know how rare that is." The confession hung in the air between them, heavy and electric. Anna felt a rush of conflicting emotions: excitement, fear, disbelief. Part of her wanted to run, to remind herself that she was just a participant, a girl trying to pay her bills. But another part, long buried, ached to believe that maybe, just maybe, someone saw her not as a subject or a case study, but as a person worth choosing. That evening, Anna wandered the estate grounds trying to clear her head. She found herself drawn to the old rose garden, its petals glistening under the soft glow of the garden lights. As she stood there, lost in thought, Lucas appeared beside her, his presence quiet but undeniable. They stood in silence for a moment before he spoke softly. "I know this is overwhelming. You do not have to decide anything now, but I wanted you to know the truth." Anna turned to him, her eyes shimmering. "What happens if I say yes?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Lucas reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his touch gentle. "Then we stop pretending. We stop hiding behind contracts and research, and we see what is real between us." For the first time, Anna saw the vulnerability in Lucas, not the polished billionaire or the distant scientist, but the man underneath, longing for something he had never been able to buy. She felt her heart stir, a mixture of hope and fear twining together inside her chest. She knew this was just the beginning, and that the path ahead would not be easy. But for the first time in her life, she wanted to take the risk. She wanted to know what it meant to be seen, to be chosen, not as an experiment, but as herself. Anna spent the next few days caught in a whirlwind of emotions. Part of her still clung to caution, reminding herself that Lucas was a billionaire who lived in a world far beyond anything she could imagine. But another part whispered that his eyes, his touch, his quiet moments of vulnerability were real. She tried to focus on the remaining tests, the questionnaires, the measured responses, but her mind kept drifting back to the way Lucas had stood beside her in the rose garden, the way his voice had softened when he said they should stop pretending. Late one night, unable to sleep, Anna wandered through the estate. She found herself near the restricted wing, a section she'd been told was off limits. Curiosity tugged at her. She hesitated, glancing around before slipping quietly through the half-open door. Inside the rooms were lined with file cabinets, shelves, stacked with folders labeled in neat, precise handwriting. Anna's chest tightened as she read the labels. Participant A, Participant B, Participant C. She moved down the row, her fingers trailing over the spines until she reached the last one. Participant F, Anna Matthews. Her own name. With shaking hands, she pulled the file free, flipping it open. Inside were detailed notes about her background, her emotional responses, her interviews with Lucas. But what made her breath hitch was the section marked Comparison Analysis. There were names she did not recognize, faces of other young women who had come before her, each marked as incomplete, terminated, or failed. Anna's knees buckled slightly as the realization hit. She was not the first. She was not the only one Lucas had tested. A soft voice behind her made her whirl around, heart pounding. Anna. Lucas stood in the doorway, his face shadowed, his eyes unreadable. What are you doing here? Anna's voice trembled. I wanted to know the truth. I wanted to know if I was just another experiment. Lucas stepped forward, his jaw tight. You were never just an experiment, Anna. But she shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. How can I believe you? How can I trust anything when you have done this before? For a long moment they stood in silence, the air between them charged and heavy. Then Lucas spoke, his voice low, rough. I did start this program to find someone who could see past the money, past the walls, past the lies. I failed over and over because I was looking for perfection, for control. But with you, Anna, I stopped looking for control. I started seeing you, not the subject, not the data. You. Anna's heart ached at the rawness in his words, but the hurt was still there, sharp and deep. Why didn't you tell me? Lucas's shoulders slumped slightly, his control cracking. Because I was afraid you would walk away. Because I have lost too much already. Anna drew in a shaky breath, fighting the storm of feelings inside her. She wanted to run, to hide, to escape the vulnerability pressing down on her. But part of her wanted to stay, to believe, to reach for the truth that scared her most. She lifted her chin, her voice unsteady, but firm. If I stay, Lucas, it is not because you picked me out of a lineup, or because I passed your tests. It is because I choose you, not the billionaire, not the scientist, but the man. Lucas closed his eyes, his jaw clenched as if holding back a tide of emotion. When he opened them again, his gaze was soft and open in a way Anna had never seen. Then stay, he whispered. Stay, not because I need you to complete a study, but because I need you beside me as you are. That night, as they sat together on the terrace, the stars stretching above them, Anna felt something settle in her chest. She did not know what the future would hold. She did not know if this fragile connection could survive the weight of everything around them. But for the first time, she was willing to try. The morning after their confrontation, Anna awoke to an emptiness she could not explain. She had expected to feel relief or maybe peace after speaking her truth to Lucas, but instead there was a quiet ache in her chest, as if something vital had shifted between them. She moved through the day in a haze, completing her assigned tasks, smiling politely at the staff, but all the while her thoughts drifted back to Lucas. She had not seen him since the night before. He had disappeared into his private wing, leaving her with only silence and unanswered questions. That evening, Anna stood on the balcony overlooking the gardens, her hands gripping the railing as the sky darkened to dusk. She wondered if she had been a fool to open her heart, if she had risked too much. Just as she was about to turn back inside, a familiar voice spoke behind her. I wondered if you would come out here tonight. She spun around, her breath catching in her throat. Lucas stood in the doorway, his face shadowed, but his eyes shining with something she could not name. They faced each other, neither speaking for a long moment. Finally, Lucas stepped closer, his voice low. Anna, I am sorry. I should have been honest from the start, but I have spent so long hiding I forgot how to be real. She felt tears sting her eyes, frustration and longing tangled together. I do not want perfect Lucas, she whispered. I just want something true. He reached out his hand, tentative, vulnerable. Then let us start there. They spent the next few days tentatively rebuilding their connection, talking late into the night, sharing stories and fears. Lucas showed Anna the parts of the estate she had never seen, the music room where he played piano to calm his restless mind, the private library where he had hidden away after his parents' deaths, the sunlit greenhouse where he grew rare flowers no one else knew about. Anna felt herself drawn deeper into his world, not the glittering billionaire life, but the quiet, wounded heart underneath. But just as they began to find their footing, the outside world came crashing in. Lucas's chief advisor confronted him one morning, demanding answers. Investors are asking questions, Lucas. The board is losing patience. You cannot keep disappearing into this project. You have a company to run. Anna overheard the heated exchange, her stomach knotting with dread. She knew she was part of the reason Lucas was being pulled in two directions, and the guilt weighed heavy on her. That evening, Lucas found her in the garden, his expression tired, his shoulders tense. They want me to end the program, Anna, he said quietly. They say it is a waste of time and resources. Anna's chest tightened. What will you do? Lucas met her gaze, his eyes searching hers. I do not care about the company or the board. I care about you. But you deserve someone who can give you all of himself, not just the pieces I have left after fighting battles every day. Anna reached for his hand, her voice trembling. Then let me fight with you. Let me stand beside you. We can face it together. Lucas pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as if afraid she would vanish. Anna, he murmured against her hair, you are the only thing that feels real. But their fragile peace was shattered the next morning when Anna received an anonymous message slipped under her door. Be careful. You are not the first girl he has brought here. Anna's heart lurched as old doubts surged back. She confronted Lucas that evening, her hands shaking. Tell me the truth, Lucas. How many others were there? How many times have you done this? Lucas's face went pale, his jaw tightening. Anna, it is not what you think. I ended those trials because I realized they were wrong. You are the only one who made me want to stop searching. But Anna's mind swirled with doubt, pain, and fear crashing together. She stepped back, tears spilling down her cheeks. I do not know if I can believe you. Lucas's voice broke. Anna, please. But she turned and fled, her heart pounding as she ran through the hallways out into the cold night. She did not stop until she reached the edge of the estate, collapsing onto a bench as sobs racked her body. She sat there for what felt like hours, her mind racing, her chest aching. She had let herself believe she could be special, that she could matter to someone like Lucas. But now all she felt was foolish and broken. Just as she was about to rise to her feet, a familiar presence appeared beside her. Lucas sat down, slowly, his face drawn, his eyes filled with quiet anguish. Anna, I cannot change the past, he said softly, but I can promise you this. I am done looking. I am done hiding. If you can find it in your heart to give me one more chance, I will spend every day proving to you that you are the only one I choose. Anna stared at him, her heart torn between fear and hope. She knew the choice before her was not simple, not easy, not guaranteed. But as she looked into Lucas's eyes, she saw not the billionaire or the scientist or the man who had made mistakes. She saw the man who was willing to fight for her, the man who had opened his heart to her, the man she wanted to believe in. Anna sat frozen on the bench, her breath trembling in her chest. Lucas's words hung in the cold night air, wrapping around her like a fragile promise. She wanted so badly to believe him, to fall into his arms and let the past fade away, but her heart thudded with uncertainty. She had come here for money, for survival, for a chance to fix her life. She had not come here to fall in love with a man who could break her just as easily as he could save her. Lucas reached out his hand, his eyes never leaving hers. "Anna, please, let me prove it to you. I cannot erase the mistakes I made before you, but I can promise you I will never make you feel like an experiment again." Anna's throat tightened as tears blurred her vision. She rose slowly, wrapping her arms around herself. "Lucas, I want to believe you. I really do. But I need to know you see me not just as the girl who passed your tests or the one who stayed when others left. I need you to see me as Anna, just Anna." Lucas's face softened, his jaw trembling slightly as if holding back his own emotion. He stepped closer, gently, cupping her face in his hands. "I see you, Anna. I see the woman who stands in front of me, stronger than anyone I have ever known. I see the woman who opened my eyes to everything I was too blind to notice. And if you will let me, I want to spend the rest of my life proving that you are not just someone I chose. You are someone I need." For a moment, time seemed to stand still as Anna searched his face for any sign of deception, any flicker of doubt. But all she saw was raw sincerity, a vulnerability that matched her own. Slowly, hesitantly, she reached up, resting her hands over his. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." The days that followed were unlike anything Anna had imagined. She and Lucas began spending every moment together, walking through the gardens, sharing meals, talking late into the night under the stars. They laughed over stories from their childhoods, confessed their fears, and dreams planned for a future neither had dared to picture before. The walls between them crumbled piece by piece, until all that remained was the truth of who they were. Two imperfect people choosing each other despite the risks. But the world outside the estate had not forgotten them. News of the abandoned research project began to spread. Investors pulled out, and Lucas's advisors warned him of impending collapse. Anna watched as Lucas faced each crisis with quiet determination, his grip on her hand never faltering, even as the weight of his empire threatened to crush him. She wanted to tell him to walk away, to leave it all behind, but she knew that was not who he was. Lucas had built his world with his own two hands, and she could not ask him to abandon it, even for love. One night as they sat together on the terrace, Lucas turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "Anna, I want to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." She nodded, heart pounding. "If I lost everything, the money, the company, the influence, would you still be here?" Anna blinked, surprised by the rawness in his voice. She reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly. "Lucas, I did not fall in love with your world. I fell in love with you." Tears shimmered in his eyes as he pulled her close, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "You are everything I never knew I was searching for, Anna. Everything." But the final test came sooner than either of them expected. Lucas's company faced a hostile takeover orchestrated by former allies who saw his distraction as weakness. He was forced to choose between fighting for control or walking away from the empire he had built. Anna stood beside him through every painful decision, watching as he wrestled with the realization that his old life no longer fit the man he had become. On the night the final vote was cast, Lucas walked into the empty boardroom, his shoulders straight, his eyes clear. Anna waited outside, her heart in her throat. When he emerged hours later, he found her standing there, hands clasped nervously. Without a word, he crossed the room, gathered her into his arms, and whispered into her ear, "I let it go, Anna. I let it all go." Anna pulled back, eyes wide. "Lucas, what does that mean?" He smiled faintly, brushing a tear from her cheek. It means I am free. It means we are free." They stood there in the quiet of the night, holding each other tightly as the world they had once known crumbled behind them. Neither knew what the future would bring, but in that moment all that mattered was the promise they had made to each other, a promise born not of contracts or experiments, but of love. Weeks passed and the estate transformed. Gone were the formal staff, the scheduled experiments, the endless charts and data. In their place, laughter echoed through the halls, music drifted from the old piano in the sunlit room, and the scent of blooming roses filled the gardens. Anna walked barefoot across the marble floor, her heart light in a way it had not been in years. She found Lucas in the library, sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by scattered books, his sleeves rolled up, his face relaxed in a rare, unguarded smile. When he looked up and saw her, his eyes lit up with a warmth that made her knees weak every single time. They spent their days building a life neither of them had planned, one rooted not in wealth or status, but in quiet joys. They cooked together, laughing when Lucas burned the toast. They sat by the fire, reading aloud, trading dreams for the future. They walked hand in hand along the cliffs, watching the sun set over the ocean, knowing they had chosen this life together. One evening, as they stood on the balcony watching the stars, Lucas turned to Anna, his expression serious. "You saved me, Anna," he said quietly. "Not from the boardroom or the investors or the empire I was drowning in. You saved me from myself." Anna felt her throat tighten as she reached for his hand. "And you saved me, Lucas, from the loneliness, from the fear that I would never be enough." They stood there in silence, letting the truth settle between them. Love had found them not through perfection or planning, but through vulnerability and choice. It was not the kind of love that swept in like a storm. It was the kind that grew slowly, steadily, a flame that refused to die, even when the winds of doubt and fear tried to snuff it out. Anna rested her head against Lucas's shoulder, smiling softly. "I used to think love was a fairy tale, something that happened to other people. But then I met you, and I realized love is a choice. Every day, every moment, we choose each other." Lucas kissed the top of her head, his voice a whisper. "And I will keep choosing you, Anna. Always." The message of their story was clear. Love is not found in contracts or experiments or perfect conditions. Love is found when two hearts stand naked and unafraid, choosing each other again and again, even when the world falls apart.